actually quite cool.
Well, if I have this jacket on, it looks like I'm coming very different.
What?
3, 2, 1.
The Gospel.
Welcome to Ministers are the Gospel. If you say off, you're off yourself. There's a common misconception that faith does not equate to something logical or something that appeals to your reason. Most people think that faith is all about emotions or believing in something that possibly should be there. I come today to correct that misconception. In 1 Peter 3:15 it reads, "But in your hearts set Christ apart as holy and acknowledge him as Lord. Always be ready to give a logical defense to anyone who asks you to account for the hope that is in you, but do it courteously and respectfully." Most people usually think that there is no logical understanding to the existence of God. True, his ways sometimes may not make sense, but the aspect of creation and the aspect of his existence is something that we can contend for logically, with evidence, and with conviction. I am reminded of Acts 17, where Paul is in Athens and he's engaging some of the intellectual people of those times. Let's just quickly go to it and see what Paul said or how it reads. In Acts 17, Paul finds himself in Athens where he's engaging some intellectual people who do not believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ. But one of the most important things that Paul does is he is able to appeal to even what they think and to counter what they think with evidence of his own. For example, when Paul is speaking to the people in Athens, he references that God is seen in all of creation and that even their own poets are able to recognize that there is something outside of themselves that points to a higher power or a higher being. But Paul does not conclude that this higher power or higher being is something that is unknown, because in Acts 17, these individuals equated the existence of the God that we know, the God of the Bible, with an unknown God. Paul presents a method and a means for them to get to know this God, and he cites the resurrection of Jesus Christ as a fundamental aspect of knowing who God is and the God that created everything. Paul says something so powerful about this God, and he says in him we have everything, our moving and our being. Most people do not understand the importance of intellectualism in Christianity today. We live in a world that is faced with many questions. We live in a world of hyper reasoning where people are constantly thinking, people are constantly arguing, people decide on the basis of evidence and logic. And the Bible is one of the greatest historical accounts of evidence for the existence of God. Beyond that, a case for Christ can be built, and a case for Christ can logically be defended. This need for intellectual Christianity extends beyond just the confines of the gospel itself. But we need Christians to be intellectual in order to deal with some of the problems that we face in the world today. I'm talking about political problems. I'm talking about economic problems. There is also a misconception that in the story of Joseph, the only important thing about Joseph was his ability to interpret dreams. This is not true, because when we read in the story of Joseph, we realize that he gave a highly economic answer to the problem that Pharaoh was about to face with the famine. So on that account, on the account of his wisdom, an account of his knowledge of the ability to ration and his ability to plan, it was an intellectual basis upon which Pharaoh understood that this man not only interpreted the dreams that God had given him, but it's a man who understands the problem at hand. And in the Bible it reads that the plan seemed good to Pharaoh, and Joseph was appointed on the basis of this. So before I leave you today, I'd like to encourage you to always understand that reason and logic is not far off from the gospel. It is not the pinnacle. The pinnacle of the gospel remains the work of the Holy Spirit and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. However, reason and logic and us understanding this faith that we have is one of the mechanisms through which we can impact and influence the world. People are living with questions. People are highly in need of a logical and a evidentiary gospel, a gospel that not only appeals to the problems that they face, a gospel that not only appeals to the questions that they have, but a gospel that appeals to the manner in which they think. Thank you.
I found the guy.
Daka.